The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was silent. Thousands of aliens from 47 different species sat in their seats, waiting for the trial to begin. The ceiling was made of glass, and through it, the stars shone like tiny diamonds against the black emptiness of space. Admiral Jake stood alone in the center of the room. He wore his blue uniform with pride, even though he knew what was coming. The humans had been brought here to face judgment, and the entire galaxy was watching. The Alliance had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They made the laws. They decided who could travel between stars. They controlled everything. And now they had decided that humanity was a problem. Jake looked around the room at the faces of the alien judges. Some had scales, some had tentacles, some were made of pure light. None of them looked friendly. High Arbiter rose from his throne. He was a crystalline being, nearly 3 meters tall, and his body glowed with a cold blue light. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like breaking ice. "Humanity of Earth, you stand accused of crimes against the Galactic Alliance," said. "You have colonized 3 star systems without permission. You have built weapons that exceed your assigned technology level, and you have attacked Alliance-protected ships." Jake wanted to laugh at that last charge. The raiders had attacked human colonies for years. They had killed thousands of innocent people. When humanity finally fought back, the Alliance called it a crime. "How do you answer these charges?" asked. Jake stepped forward. His voice was calm and steady. "The colonies were established on empty worlds that no one else wanted. The weapons were built to protect our people from raiders, and we only fought after they murdered our citizens while the Alliance did nothing." A wave of whispers moved through the audience. Some of the alien delegates looked uncomfortable. They knew the truth, even if they would not admit it. But did not care about truth. He cared about power. "The Alliance has reviewed the evidence," he said. "We find humanity guilty on all charges." Jake felt his heart grow cold, but he did not show any emotion on his face. He had expected this. They all had. "The punishment is exile," continued. "All humans will be removed from Alliance space. Your species will be relocated to the outer rim, beyond our borders. You will receive no protection, no trade, and no contact with civilized species. This sentence is effective immediately." The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates cheered, others sat in shocked silence. A few even looked ashamed. Jake did not move. He stood there in the center of that great hall, surrounded by aliens who had just condemned his entire species to death, because that was what exile meant. The outer rim was a wasteland of dead stars and barren rocks. No one survived there for long. Raised one crystalline hand for silence. Does the human wish to speak before sentence is carried out? Jake looked up at the High Arbiter. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a voice that carried to every corner of that massive room, he spoke 7 words. "We will remember how you treated us." The silence that followed was absolute, even seemed surprised by the simple statement. There was no anger in Jake's voice, no pleading, just a promise. Far away on Earth, Dr. Lisa Grant watched the trial on a screen in her underground bunker. She was surrounded by computers and machines that hummed with power. This was the control center for Project Exodus, a secret plan that the government had created 10 years ago. No one had believed they would ever need it, but Lisa had known better. She had studied the Alliance. She understood how they worked. They did not see humans as equals. They saw them as pets at best and pests at worst. Her assistant, a young man named Danny Brooks, stood beside her. His face was pale with shock. "They really did it," he whispered. "They actually exiled us." Lisa nodded slowly. "Start the evacuation protocols. We have 72 hours before Alliance ships arrive to enforce the sentence." The next 3 days were chaos. 8 billion people had to be moved from Earth and the colonies to the outer rim. There were not enough ships. There was not enough time. Families were separated. People died in the rush to escape. Lisa worked without sleep, coordinating the massive operation. Ship after ship launched from Earth, carrying as many people as possible. They took everything they could: food, medicine, tools, seeds, books, and weapons, especially weapons. On the third day, Alliance warships appeared in Earth's orbit. Their message was simple: leave now or be destroyed. The last transport ship lifted off from New York City just as the deadline passed. Lisa was on board, watching through a window as Earth grew smaller and smaller behind them. Danny sat next to her, his eyes red from crying. "Will we ever come back?" he asked. Lisa did not answer. She could not promise something she was not sure of, but deep in her heart she made a vow. Humanity would survive this. They would grow strong, and one day they would return. The journey to the outer rim took 6 months. The ships traveled in a great convoy, protecting each other from pirates and raiders. Many ships were old and poorly maintained. Some broke down along the way. Some were lost forever. But most of them made it. When they finally arrived at the first planet, a barren rock called New Haven, Jake was there to greet them. He had traveled ahead with the military ships to secure the landing zone. "Welcome to our new home," he said over the radio. "It does not look like much now, but we will change that. We will build cities, we will grow crops, we will raise our children, and we will never forget what was done to us." The ships began to land one by one. People stepped out onto the rocky ground and looked up at an unfamiliar sky. There were no birds, no trees, no water that they could see, just dust and stone and silence. But they were alive, they were together, and they were free. Lisa Grant stood on a small hill, watching the refugees set up their first camp. She held a small device in her hand, a scanner that could detect certain types of energy. She had brought it because she had a theory about the outer rim, something that the Alliance did not know. The scanner beeped. Lisa looked at the reading and smiled for the first time in months. "What is it?" Danny asked. "Hope," Lisa said quietly. "I found hope." She did not explain further. Not yet. But she knew that humanity had not been sent to die in the darkness. They had been sent to discover something wonderful, something that would change everything. The first night on New Haven was cold and dark, but in the camps scattered across the planet, humans lit fires and shared food. They told stories about Earth. They sang songs that their grandparents had taught them. They held their children close and promised them a better future. Humanity had been exiled, but humanity was not broken. They were just getting started. The first year in the Outer Rim was the hardest. People called it the Year of Tears because so many died. There was not enough food. The barren worlds could not grow crops without years of work. Water was scarce. Medicine ran out quickly. The old and the sick suffered the most. Governor Cole worked day and night to keep New Haven alive. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Before the exile, he had been a city planner on Earth. Now he was responsible for the survival of 2 million people. "We need to build greenhouses," he told his council. "Underground ones that can hold heat and moisture. If we do not grow food soon, we will starve." His chief engineer was a woman named Peters. She was young but brilliant. She had designed some of the most advanced buildings on Earth. Now she was designing mud huts and water collectors. "I can build them," said, "but I need materials. The ships that brought us here are falling apart. If we take them apart for metal, we will never be able to leave this planet." Made the hard choice. Take the ships apart. We are not going anywhere for a long time. Across the 17 human worlds, similar choices were being made. People sacrificed their past to build their future. Ships became buildings. Uniforms became blankets. Weapons became tools. But not all weapons. Commander Kate made sure of that. Kate led what remained of the human military. She had 300 ships, most of them old cargo vessels with guns attached. It was not much of a fleet, but it was all they had. "The will come," she told her officers. "They have been raiding this region for centuries. When they learn that humans are here, they will attack." She was right. 6 months after the exile began, scout ships appeared in human space. There were reptilian creatures with sharp teeth and cruel eyes. They lived for battle and took pleasure in causing pain. The Alliance had never stopped them because they were useful. They kept species like humans afraid and obedient. But humans were no longer afraid. The first battle happened near a small mining colony called. 3 raiders attacked, expecting easy prey. They found Kate waiting for them with 12 ships. The battle was short and brutal. Kate's ships were slower and weaker, but her pilots were desperate. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose, because they were. When the battle ended, 2 ships were destroyed and the 3rd was fleeing. Kate had lost 4 ships and 32 good people, but she had 1. Word of the victory spread quickly. For the first time since the exile, humans had something to celebrate. They had beaten the monsters that even the Alliance feared. More battles followed. They sent larger fleets. Kate developed new tactics. She hid ships behind asteroids. She used decoys to confuse the enemy. She attacked supply lines instead of warships. They learned to fear human space. They still raided, but not as often, not as boldly. The prey had become dangerous. While Kate fought in space, Lisa Grant searched for answers on the ground. Her scanner had detected something on the first day. Strange energy readings coming from deep underground. For months, she could not investigate because there were more urgent problems, but finally she had time to dig. What she found changed everything. Beneath the surface of New Haven was a gateway. It was made of metal that Lisa did not recognize, covered in symbols that no human had ever seen. It was ancient, perhaps millions of years old, and it still worked. "This is precursor technology," Lisa whispered, her hands shaking with excitement. "The species that built this existed before the Alliance, before any current civilization." Danny Brooks stood beside her, staring at the massive ring of metal. "What does it do?" Lisa ran her scanner over the symbols. "It is a transportation device, a doorway between worlds. If I am reading these symbols correctly, there are hundreds of these gateways scattered across the galaxy. Can we use it?" Lisa smiled. "I intend to find out." It took 3 years to unlock the secrets of the precursor gateway. Lisa worked with a team of scientists, studying every symbol, testing every system. They made mistakes. Some were dangerous. 2 researchers died when a power surge destroyed their equipment. But in the end, they succeeded. The first test was simple. They sent a small probe through the gateway. It vanished in a flash of blue light. 30 seconds later, it returned, carrying images of a world on the other side of the galaxy. Lisa showed the images to Governor Cole and Commander. They saw a planet covered in forests and rivers, rich with life and resources. And best of all, it was empty. "There is a matching gateway on this world," Lisa explained. "The precursors built a network connecting hundreds of systems. We can travel between them instantly, without ships." Kate understood immediately. "The Alliance does not know about these gateways. They cannot follow us. They cannot find us." Saw the possibilities. We can colonize new worlds. We can grow. We can become strong. Within 5 years, humanity had spread to 42 star systems. The precursor gateway network was their secret highway, hidden from Alliance eyes. Each new world brought new resources, new opportunities, new hope. Children born after the exile grew up knowing only the frontier. They were tough and clever and unafraid. The stories they heard were not about the great cities of Earth. They were about survival and defiance and the promise of revenge. A new generation was rising. They called themselves the Children of Exile. One of these children was a boy named Ben Harper. His parents had died on the voyage to the Outer Rim. He was raised by soldiers in one of Kate's camps. He learned to fight before he learned to read. At 16, he joined the fleet. At 20, he commanded his own ship. At 25, he was the youngest captain in human history. Ben was not interested in peace. He wanted justice. He wanted the Alliance to pay for what they had done. "My parents died because aliens decided we were not good enough," he told his crew. "One day, we will make them understand their mistake." His words were dangerous, but they were also popular. Many in the new generation felt the same way. The wounds of exile were still fresh. The anger had not faded. Wise leaders like Cole tried to channel this anger into building rather than fighting. He created schools and hospitals and factories. He wrote laws that protected the weak and punished the cruel. He built a civilization from nothing. But he knew that eventually, the young ones would demand action. In the 30th year of exile, Cole died peacefully in his sleep. He was 83 years old. At his funeral, 1 million people gathered to honor the man who had kept them alive. His last words were recorded and played for the crowd. "Do not waste what we have built on revenge. Build something better than what we lost. Show the galaxy what humans can become when no one holds them back." It was good advice. Not everyone would follow it. Kate had retired by then, but she came to the funeral. She was old now, her hair white and her hands unsteady, but her eyes were still sharp. She found Ben Harper in the crowd. He was a fleet admiral now, commanding the largest human military force in history. "You have done well," she told him. "Your ships are strong, your soldiers are loyal." Ben nodded respectfully. "I learned from the best, Commander." Kate looked at him closely. "I know what you want to do. I know what your generation dreams about. Just remember that war is not a game. People die. Families are destroyed. Make sure what you are fighting for is worth the cost." Ben met her gaze. 30 years ago, we were thrown into the darkness to die. We did not die. We grew stronger. Now we have a chance to change the galaxy forever. That is worth any cost. Kate said nothing. She understood his anger. She had felt it herself long ago, but she was tired now. The fire that had burned in her chest had faded to embers. She watched Ben walk away, surrounded by young officers who him. The future belonged to them now. She could only hope they would use it wisely. High above New Haven, the stars shone cold and distant, but humans no longer feared the darkness between them. They had made it their home. And soon they would make it their empire. 40 years after the exile, humanity was unrecognizable. The scattered refugees had become citizens of the Terran Confederation. 42 star systems were connected by the precursor gateway network. Billions of people lived on worlds that had been barren rock just decades before. Fleet Admiral Ben Harper stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Resolute. It was the most powerful warship ever built by human hands, 3 kilometers long, carrying enough weapons to destroy a planet. And it was just one of 300 ships in the Confederate Navy. Ben was 55 years old now. His hair had turned gray, but his body was still strong. Years of military discipline had kept him sharp. His eyes held the same fire they had when he was a young captain full of anger and dreams. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the," said his communications officer, a young woman named Jenna Clark. Ben nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. There were insect-like beings with large, compound eyes and clicking mandibles. To most humans, they looked frightening, but Ben had learned to see past appearances. The leader, a queen named, spoke in a buzzing voice that the translation device turned into English. "Admiral Harper, we have considered your offer. That will join the Confederation." Ben allowed himself a small smile. "Welcome, Queen. Your people will find safety and prosperity among us." This was the latest victory in a quiet war that Ben had been fighting for 10 years. Not a war of ships and weapons, but a war of ideas. The Galactic Alliance had treated many species the way they had treated humanity. Some were exiled. Some were enslaved. Some were simply ignored while raiders destroyed their homes. Ben had found these broken peoples and offered them something the Alliance never had: respect. They had been expelled for refusing to pay unfair taxes. The aquatic beings with silver scales had watched their ocean world be drained for mining. The small furry creatures who lived in vast tunnel networks had been hunted for sport by wealthy Alliance nobles. One by one, they came to human space. They brought skills and knowledge and perspectives that humans did not have. In return, humans gave them protection and a place to belong. Chancellor had supported this expansion from the beginning. She was the elected leader of the Confederation, a tall woman with red hair and green eyes who had been born on one of the first exile ships. She remembered the old days of starvation and fear. She was determined that no one would ever suffer that way again. "The Alliance sees us as primitives," she told the Confederate Assembly. "They think we are hiding in the darkness, waiting to die. Let them think that. Every year we grow stronger. Every year we gain new allies. When the time comes, they will learn how wrong they were." The Assembly cheered. They loved their Chancellor. She spoke with passion and led with wisdom. Under her guidance, the Confederation had become a true power. But not everyone agreed with her patient approach. General Stone commanded the Confederate ground forces. He was a hard man who believed in action over words. He had spent 20 years fighting pirates and raiders in the frontier systems. He was tired of waiting. "Every day we hide, more people suffer under Alliance rule," he argued in private meetings. "We have the strength to liberate them now. Why do we hesitate?" Answered calmly, "Because we are not ready. The Alliance still outnumbers us 10 to 1. They have weapons and ships that we have never seen. If we strike too soon, we will be destroyed. And if we wait too long, the moment will pass." It was an old argument. They had it many times, but was the Chancellor, and her word was law. Ambassador Palmer was solution to impatience. He was a quiet man with a gift for languages and a talent for making friends. His job was to build bridges with species still inside Alliance territory, preparing for the day when the Confederation would make its move. Traveled disguised as a merchant, visiting world after world. He found allies in surprising places. Some were officials who hated their corrupt governments. Some were rebels who dreamed of freedom. Some were ordinary people who just wanted a better life for their children. He sent reports back to through secure channels. "The Alliance is weaker than it appears. The member species are unhappy. They pay tribute but receive nothing in return. They are afraid of the who raid with impunity. A strong push could break the whole system apart." Read these reports with great interest. She shared them with Ben Harper and a small circle of trusted advisors. They began to make plans. Meanwhile, life in the Confederation continued to improve. Dr. Lisa Grant, now in her 70s, led the Precursor Research Institute on New Terra. Her team had unlocked many secrets of the ancient technology. They had better power sources, faster communication systems, and medical devices that could cure diseases that Earth doctors had thought incurable. The precursors were far more advanced than any current species, Lisa told her students. They disappeared millions of years ago, and we still do not understand why. But they left behind tools that can change the galaxy. It is our responsibility to use them wisely. Her best student was a young woman named Amy, who had a natural talent for understanding alien technology. Amy discovered that the precursor gateways were just one part of a larger network. There were archives hidden on certain worlds, containing knowledge that had been preserved for ages. "If we can find these archives," Amy said excitedly, "we could learn things that took other species thousands of years to develop. We could catch up to the Alliance in decades instead of centuries." Lisa approved the expedition. Amy led a team to a distant world called Sanctuary, where her calculations suggested an archive might exist. What she found there was beyond imagination. The archive was buried deep underground, protected by devices that tested visitors in mysterious ways. Many who entered never returned, but Amy was patient and clever. She solved puzzles that had stumped ancient civilizations. She passed tests that had destroyed entire expeditions. In the heart of the archive, she found a chamber filled with glowing crystals. Each crystal contained the memories and knowledge of a precursor individual. There were thousands of them. Amy touched one of the crystals. Information flooded into her mind. She saw star maps and weapon designs and histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen while humans were still living in caves. She also saw a warning. The precursors had not simply disappeared. They had been destroyed. Something had come from beyond the galaxy, something terrible and hungry. The precursors had fought it and lost. But before they died, they had hidden their knowledge. They had seeded the galaxy with gateways and archives, hoping that one day younger species would find them, species who might succeed where the precursors had failed. Amy returned to New Terra with her discoveries. She shared the knowledge but kept the warning private. She told only Lisa and Chancellor about the threat that had ended the precursors. Listened carefully. Is this thing still out there? I do not know, Amy admitted. The records are millions of years old, but if it is, we are not ready to face it. No one in this galaxy is. Made a decision. Then we must unite the galaxy, not through conquest but through cooperation. When the threat returns, we will face it together. It was a noble goal, but first they had to deal with more immediate problems. The Dominion was growing bolder. They had conquered several Alliance border worlds and demanded tribute from others. The Alliance seemed unable or unwilling to stop them. And in the shadows, High Arbiter still ruled. He was old now, ancient by any standard, but his hatred of humanity burned as bright as ever. He had not forgotten the human admiral who had stood in his court and made a promise. He had not forgotten, and he was watching. The war began without warning. The Dominion had grown tired of raiding. They wanted an empire of their own, and they decided to take it from the Galactic Alliance. In a single day, fleets attacked 30 Alliance systems. They destroyed defense stations, conquered planets, and killed millions. The Alliance military, soft from centuries of peace, crumbled before the assault. High Arbiter watched the reports from his palace on Nexus Prime. For the first time in his long life, he felt fear. How is this possible? He demanded. They are primitives, they should not have this strength. His advisors had no answers. They had ignored the threat for too long. They had believed that raiders could never become conquerors. They had been wrong. Within 6 months, they controlled half of Alliance space. Their leader, a massive reptilian warlord named, announced his intention to destroy Nexus Prime and end the Alliance forever. Had no choice. He did something he had never imagined doing. He sent envoys to the Outer Rim asking humanity for help. Chancellor received the Alliance ambassadors in her office on New Terra. It was a simple room with plain walls and basic furniture. She had chosen it deliberately to contrast with Alliance luxury. The ambassadors were nervous. They represented a government that had condemned humanity to death. Now they were begging for salvation. The Galactic Alliance requests military assistance, the lead ambassador said, his voice trembling. We are prepared to offer trade agreements and diplomatic recognition in exchange. Looked at them for a long moment. You exiled us to die, you called us criminals, you watched while raiders murdered our people, now you come asking for help. The ambassador bowed his head. I know this is difficult, but millions of innocent beings are suffering. Surely humanity will not abandon them. Turned to look out the window. She could see the city below, a city that humans had built from nothing. She could see ships rising into the sky, carrying goods and people to dozens of worlds. She could see children playing in parks, children who had never known hunger or fear. No, she said finally, Humanity will not abandon them. She turned back to the ambassadors. But we will not come as your servants. We will not take orders from the Alliance. We will come as equals, or we will not come at all. The negotiations took 3 weeks. In that time, they conquered 5 more systems. Finally, the Alliance agreed to terms. The Terran Confederation would be recognized as an independent power with full rights under galactic law. All charges against humanity would be dropped. And after the war, there would be a complete review of Alliance policies toward other species. It was more than anyone had expected, but was not finished. One more thing, she said. High Arbiter must personally apologize for the exile. He must admit that it was wrong. The ambassadors looked shocked. The High Arbiter has never apologized for anything. He will refuse. Then we will refuse to help. The message went back to Nexus Prime. For 2 days there was no response. Then finally, a transmission came through. High Arbiter appeared on the screen, looking older and weaker than anyone remembered. I apologize, he said, the words clearly painful for him. The exile was wrong. Humanity deserved better. It was not sincere. Everyone knew that, but it was enough. Fleet Admiral Ben Harper assembled his forces at the precursor gateway leading to Alliance space. 300 human warships, 200 ships from allied species, 500,000 soldiers and pilots and engineers ready to fight. Ben addressed them before the attack. 45 years ago, our grandparents were thrown into the darkness. They were told to die quietly. They refused. They survived. They built. They grew strong. Now we return to the place that rejected us not as beggars but as saviors. Fight well, fight with honor, and never forget who we are and why we are here. The fleet moved through the gateway and emerged in Alliance space for the first time in 45 years. The Battle of Nexus Prime would become the largest space battle in galactic history. They had brought 500 warships, commanded by Warlord himself. They surrounded the orbital station where humanity had once been condemned. They planned to destroy it as a symbol of Alliance weakness. They did not expect the Confederation fleet. Ben Harper commanded from the bridge of the Resolute. He had spent years studying tactics, learning their weaknesses. He knew that they fought as individuals, each captain seeking personal glory. They had never faced an enemy that worked together as one. All ships execute Formation Delta 7, Ben ordered. Squadrons begin your attack runs. Ambush teams activate stealth systems. Human battleships hold the line. The battle was chaos. Thousands of weapons fired at once, turning space into a storm of fire and light. Ships exploded. Pilots died. But the Confederation forces held their formation while they scattered. Captain Torres commanded a strike force of 50 fast attack ships. Her mission was to break through the line and cripple their flagship. She was 32 years old, born in exile, trained for war since childhood. Stay on my wing, she told her pilots. We hit them hard and fast, no hesitation. They dove into the enemy formation, dodging fire from every direction. Ships fell around her. Friends she had known for years died in flashes of flame, but kept flying, kept fighting, kept pushing forward. She reached the flagship, a massive vessel covered in weapons and armor. Her targeting computer locked on to the engine section. All ships fire everything. 50 ships launched their missiles at once. The flagship's shields collapsed under the assault. Secondary explosions tore through the hull. The great warship began to drift, powerless and dying. Warlord raged on his burning bridge. He could not believe what was happening. The humans were supposed to be weak. The exile had been supposed to break them. How could they be winning? He ordered a retreat, but it was too late. Lieutenant Chris Wade had positioned his squadron behind the escape route. When the enemy ships tried to flee, they flew straight into his trap. Pilot Kelly Marsh flew one of the smallest ships in the fleet, a single-seat fighter designed for speed and agility. She had been given one mission: destroy the command station that was coordinating their fleet. She flew through fire and death, dodging shots that would have killed her instantly. Her shields failed, her weapons overheated, but she reached the station and launched her last missile. The station exploded. The fleet lost all coordination. Ships ran into each other. Captains gave conflicting orders. Panic spread through their ranks. Ben Harper saw his opportunity. All ships advance, push them back, show them what humanity can do. The Confederation fleet surged forward. They, without leadership or coordination, could not stand against them. Ship after ship surrendered or fled. The great invasion force that had conquered half the galaxy was broken in hours. When the battle ended, Nexus Prime still stood. The Alliance was saved, and humanity had proven itself to be the greatest military power in the galaxy. Warlord was captured and brought before Ben Harper in chains. "You have lost," Ben said simply. "Your empire is over." Snarled, "We will rise again. We will have revenge." Ben shook his head. "No, you will not. The Dominion ends today. Your people will choose new leaders, peaceful leaders. And if they ever threaten the galaxy again, we will return and finish what we started." It was not a threat, it was a promise. On Nexus Prime, High Arbiter watched the human fleet orbit his station. He had been saved by the species he had condemned. The irony was not lost on him. Chancellor arrived to negotiate the peace. She walked through the same halls where Admiral Jake had been sentenced to exile. But now, she walked as an equal. "The war is over," she told the Alliance Council. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy cannot continue as it has. There must be change." The delegates listened. They had no choice. The Confederation fleet floated outside their windows, a reminder of what happened to those who opposed humanity. A new age was dawning, and humanity would shape it. 1 year after the Battle of Nexus Prime, the galaxy was still learning what peace meant. The Galactic Alliance had ruled for 10,000 years. Its laws and customs and hierarchies had seemed eternal. Now they were crumbling, and something new was rising in their place. Chancellor stood before an assembly larger than any in history. Representatives from 300 worlds had gathered on New Terra, the human capital. They came to build a new government, a new order, a new future. Looked out at the sea of alien faces. Some had scales, some had feathers, some were made of light or crystal or living stone. They came from species that had been enemies, allies, or strangers. Now they were all equal members of a shared community. The Galactic Alliance failed because it was built on fear and control, said. It treated younger species as children to be managed, not partners to be respected. We will not make that mistake. She gestured to the document displayed behind her. This is the Charter of the Galactic Commonwealth. It guarantees freedom, equality, and self-determination for every species. No one will be exiled for defending themselves. No one will be ignored while raiders destroy their homes. No one will be told they are not advanced enough to deserve rights. The assembly erupted in applause. For many of these species, this was the first time they had ever been treated as equals. The words meant more than could know. High Admiral Ben Harper watched from the back of the room. He had led the military campaign that made this moment possible, but he understood that building peace was harder than winning wars. After the ceremony, he found on a balcony overlooking the city. "You did well," he said. Smiled tiredly. "We both did. Neither of us could have done this alone." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Below them, the city was alive with celebration. Music and laughter drifted up from the streets. "Do you remember the exile ships?" asked. "I was just a baby when we left Earth. My mother told me stories about those days, the hunger, the fear, the way people helped each other even when they had nothing left." Ben nodded. "I remember. My parents died on those ships. I was raised by soldiers who barely had enough food for themselves. They gave me everything they had. That is why we are who we are, said. We learned that survival is not enough. We have to take care of each other. We have to build something worth living for. Ben looked at her. Some people think we should have taken revenge, conquered the Alliance, made them suffer the way we suffered. And what do you think? He was quiet for a long moment. I used to want that. I used to dream about making them pay, but then I realized something. Revenge does not heal wounds. It just creates new ones. The only way to truly win is to become better than those who hurt you. Put her hand on his shoulder. That is exactly why I need you to lead the Commonwealth Defense Force. Not because you know how to fight, but because you know when not to. Ben accepted the position. He spent the next decade building a military that protected instead of conquered. Ships patrolled trade routes, keeping them safe from pirates. Soldiers helped rebuild worlds damaged by the invasion. The Commonwealth became known as a force for peace. Dr. Amy continued her work at the Precursor Research Institute. The archives she had discovered contained more knowledge than humanity could use in 1,000 years. She led teams that developed new technologies, each one changing life in the Commonwealth. Clean energy that could power entire planets without pollution. Medical devices that could cure diseases and extend. Communication systems that connected distant worlds in real time. The secrets of the precursors brought prosperity to species that had known only struggle. But Amy never forgot the warning she had found in the archives. The thing that had destroyed the precursors was still out there, somewhere in the darkness between galaxies. She created a secret program to monitor the void, watching for any sign of the ancient threat. We may have a century, she told in a private meeting. We may have 1,000,000 years, but eventually it will return. We need to be ready. Understood. Then we use this time wisely. We unite the galaxy. We share knowledge and resources. When the darkness comes, it will face all of us together. On Earth, restoration work continued. They had been neglected for 45 years, but humans were returning. They planted forests where cities had once stood. They cleaned rivers that had been polluted for centuries. They built new settlements that worked with nature instead of against it. In Geneva, workers constructed a memorial to the exile. A wall of black granite held the names of every human who had died in those dark years. There were millions of names, each one representing a story of suffering and loss. Above the names, carved in gold letters, were the words Admiral Jake had spoken at his trial. We will remember how you treated us. Beneath that, the Commonwealth added a new inscription, chosen by vote from citizens across 100 worlds. And we will show you how to do better. The memorial became a place of pilgrimage. Species from across the galaxy came to see it. They read the names and learned the stories. They understood that humanity had faced destruction and chosen to respond with hope instead of hatred. High Arbiter died 2 years after the Battle of Nexus Prime. He was ancient, over 1,000 years old by human counting. His final days were spent in a simple room on Nexus Prime, stripped of power and honor. Some said he deserved worse. Some said he should have been executed for his crimes, but had refused. If we kill him, we become what he was, she said. Let him live long enough to see everything he believed in proven wrong. That is punishment enough. Died knowing that humanity, the species he had dismissed as primitive, had reshaped the entire galaxy. It was a bitter ending for a being who had once considered himself the most powerful creature in existence. The story of human exile became legend. Children on 1,000 worlds grew up hearing about the people who were thrown into darkness and emerged as lights. The tale was told in songs and books and holographic movies. But the best version was told by the survivors themselves. Lisa Grant lived to be 98 years old. In her final years, she traveled from world to world, speaking to audiences about the early days. She told them about the fear and the hunger and the death. She told them about the discoveries that changed everything. She told them about the choice to build instead of destroy. Humanity was not special because we were strong, she said in her last public speech. We were special because we refused to let our suffering make us cruel. We could have become monsters. We could have taken revenge on everyone who hurt us. Instead, we chose to become healers. We chose to become builders. We chose to become what the galaxy needed us to be. She died peacefully, surrounded by students and colleagues who had become family. Her name was added to the memorial on Earth, not as a victim of exile, but as a hero who helped humanity survive it. Ben Harper retired at 75, after 30 years leading the Commonwealth Defense Force. He bought a small farm on New Haven, the same world where humanity had first landed after exile. He spent his final years growing crops and teaching young people how to fly ships. He died at 82, holding his granddaughter's hand. His last words were simple. "We made it." Served as first Speaker of the Commonwealth until she was 65, then stepped aside to let new leaders take over. She spent her retirement writing a history of the exile, making sure that future generations would understand what had happened and why. The book ended with these words. "They threw us into the void expecting us to disappear. Instead, we built an empire of hope, not because we were better than them, but because we chose to be. That is the lesson of our exile. That is the gift we offer to the galaxy. No matter how dark things seem, there is always a choice. Choose hope. Choose kindness. Choose to build something worth living for." Across the Galactic Commonwealth, billions of beings read those words and took them to heart. The exile was over. The empire was built. And the future was brighter than anyone had dared to dream. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as leaders, as builders, as the species that looked into the darkness and decided to light a fire. The story was just beginning. But what a beginning it was!